We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll start with the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we have, I need a approval of the agenda for tonight.
I move that we approve the agenda for tonight.
You want to second that?
Oh, you second these things? Yeah, sure, absolutely.
All right, any discussion on the agenda items? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Agenda's
aye.
approved. Directors Bode and Whiteman have excused absences for this meeting, so it'll just be the three of us. Public comments. No one signed up, but is there anybody who would like to speak to the board for him? Going once, going twice? There'll be another opportunity at the end of this meeting. Cool. Already moving right along. Love it. Board member comments. Anna, do you want to start?
Woot. Let's see. Am I on here? Okay. Let's see. The last Friday, I got to visit the art rooms. Because I've been sick and surgery and all this, I haven't been able to go like I wanted to. And I got some good information, and next year I get to volunteer with the, I forget Jen's last name.
Lucas.
Mm-hmm. Just awesome people. And Gavin Forseth, awesome guy. Totally on fire, running like 3 different classrooms at one time. I can't wait to go there and do that next year. And I know this is a little off, but not really. I've been putting together a candlelight vigil for a domestic violence victim, and on the 30th of this month at 7 p.m. up at the Sandhill Fields, the county fields. And it's not just for that one person, but for other domestic violence victims and for children of domestic violence. So it's pass it on or come and see it on Facebook and share it, but it's going to be a really amazing. People in the community have given so much to this, and it's all just free. You know, everybody come, and the fire department's going to make hot dogs, feed everybody hot dogs, and community is making cookies, and it's just an amazing, emotional event. So wanted to put it out there.
Awesome. Great.
Well, I was privileged to participate in graduation with my colleagues this last week, and that was a wonderful experience, since that's what I usually do throughout my life at this time. It's always wonderful for me to do that. I went to the legislative conference on the 15th and 16th of WASDA as your representative to the that legislative body. As I've indicated before, my focus is on what do we need that is not necessarily on the agenda. So here's what I talked to Dana, as is my custom, and we were working on regionalization, since we've had some experience with that, not all of it fortunate. So Dana suggested this language, wording of our regionalization compensation proposal. See, what we do at this conference is we refine, we look over legislative proposals, streamline them, say, are they redundant, this kind of thing, and then we vote on whether or not this will be part of the legislative agenda, WAS's official agenda, that we will take then to the membership at the conference in, what is it, November? Okay. Then I suggested this language: no 2 neighboring districts shall have a regionalization factor greater than 1 tercile. I thought that was great. It sounds technical and is absolutely on point. The effect of this would be to raise all of Mason County districts to what?
The rest of them would go to 6%.
Yeah, they would go to 6%, we would go to 12.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened? Our legal team determined that our proposal is what the law requires in the first place.
That's what I thought.
So, a further problem is that even if our proposal were new and helpful for Mason County, it would not have the intended effect in eastern Washington. See, this would raise all the other little districts in Mason County to at least 6%. So it not just benefit us, but the county. So, key problem I didn't see coming, and I should have, is that even if our proposal were new, it doesn't fit the needs of eastern Washington because many of them are not near any population area. So, they don't get any regionalization factor to begin with. If therefore we're going to address this problem, we need to have the whole state in view. What did we end up with? We ended up with language, we ended up with the following language. We ended up with the following proposal. You will see a modified version of our proposal in there and another sentence that's related. The question that we had to debate whether ours would go as a separate bill, we determined it would make it more vulnerable, so we combined pieces of legislation and put two proposals together. What I'm going to offer you is clearer than the truth, but I think sometimes for clarity, democracy is not the best approach to writing clearly. Anyway, the effect of what we want is this. WASDA shall initiate and/or support legislation in which the method for determining a school district's regionalization factor for salary allocation results in a difference of no greater than 3% between neighboring districts. You can see that's our part.
That's perfect.
In addition, WASDA supports the establishment of a state-level process for regular review of statewide salary allocation method, for regular review of statewide salary allocation in which the decision-making would be transparent.
That's good.
So that's the intent of the actual thing. If you need the language, I can give you the actual language. I never did like methodology, so it's just method. But that's essentially what we've got, and that's what we will take to WASDA. The Legislative Committee approved it, so that will be on the ballot for ratification by our memberships with a due pass recommendation from the Legislative Committee as we go into our annual convention.
Great, thanks, John. My comment is, I thought graduation was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good reminder. I mean, we go through all the stuff about legislation and finances and stuff, and I think that's just a really pure opportunity to see the end result of all the work that the district does.
Very well put.
And it's kind of, we have policies on ends, and that's the ends right there. And another thing is I'd like to give my sincerest gratitude to the staff at North Mason School District. It's amazing to me sitting up there and just kind of being able to watch. I'm a bit of a people watcher anyway. But how many teachers who stood up or who were present that aren't high school teachers, they're kindergarten teachers were there. I've seen a couple third grade teachers were there. I mean, these are staff who have a vested interest in their students. And I know not all those can be their biological children, so they're there to see their kids who they've come through their classroom. And plenty of people who are there who don't have kids that are graduating. They know these kids, and so it's such a great community event, and I'm glad it was here. I think it went off better than it could be expected, and so that's all I have. I thought that was the most important thing.
I just have to add on to that. This was a great thing. We've been working on, at least the three of us, Art and Laura and I, have been working toward this day for our brief political careers here. And to see graduation at home actually come off was just, gave you a thrill down your back.
That's the other, I should have started with that, and of course,
You did, but I thought of it,
That's how
so.
far back that I can't think very far back. My brain's not working, I guess. But it was, of course, tear-filled and amazing, but how well that it was packed in there. It wasn't like sardines, but it was like a family. Like we were just all hugging each other, and it was so, I don't know, I cried for that. I cried for everything. It was more emotional than it was when it's at the pavilion. It was nice. It was always nice, and they always did a good job, but it was so sterile compared to this, and sitting in there, I was overwhelmed. It was awesome.
It was, I don't want to say rowdy, but it was fun. It was
Yeah.
it was a very
It was
good.
a little
It was the
rowdy.
heart of
A little rowdy,
Belfair,
but it was
our hearts.
But it was
are
good,
all
and it's
in there.
obvious that this senior class, they like to have a good time, and
Yeah.
why not?
There was some
Yeah.
special chemistry there.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's just a little smaller than the pavilion, but you
Yeah.
could, sometimes you will go into a meeting and just feel some electricity. And I thought that was happening there and was very pleased.
All right, so with that, Spencer is also excused tonight, and so I'm going to just bypass the student board member comments unless he left anything
What
with
about
you.
Ryan?
Ryan stepped down. We
Yeah,
have a
stepped
new
down.
student for next year.
Awesome.
So,
Okay.
so that moves us into the consent items, the consent agenda, and I will take a motion to accept that.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the consent items as given in our packet.
Okay? Got it.
Guess I second that.
Yeah. Got a motion for the consent items. Any discussion?
I think it's a good idea.
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm
Okay.
good.
All those in favor of accepting or of approving the consent items signify by saying aye.
Aye?
Aye. Passes. That moves us into, is that right?
Where'd it go?
Where am I missing here? I feel like I'm missing the
I know.
spot.
I
We're-
would just like to call out the last item in the consent agenda, the new instructional materials for
What
me.
Yeah.
number is that?
Item J, right before number 3, 2J.
Oh, you know what? I missed something here. We need to, we've already approved it, but we need a nomination for, I don't know why that was in the consent agenda.
I think it needs to be moved.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the materials and then we can talk about moving that out of there?
Well, we've already approved it, so we're going to need to reopen the consent agenda, so.
I move that we reopen the consent agenda.
Okay. John?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All those in
Very
favor?
good.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're reopening that. We're going to pull the legislative rep nomination
Aye.
and then new instructional material
Yes.
from that. So removing those from the consent agenda, I would take another motion to approve, approving those, minus those two items.
I move we approve the consent agenda minus I and J.
Okay. John, you good with that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify
Aye.
by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Okay.
so let's do I first.
Okay, let's do I first.
So we need appears your 2-year term has come up to a close here, so we need to nominate a legislative representative for another 2-year position. Do you have any interest in serving that position going forward, or do you have a nomination?
New blood is always welcome. I rather enjoy this position and finally figured out some of the things that it's about. So I would be open to being to a draft.
Okay. Well, I will.
If nominated, I would run.
I'll accept a nomination for the legislative.
I definitely
rep.
nominate John for legislative rep. He's amazing at it, and his brain is like made for
Pride.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
And I will second that nomination. And any other nominations? Okay, hearing none. I'll look, those in favor of John Campbell nomination and to serve as our legislative rep for the next 2 years, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking.
All right. Now, new instructional material.
Yeah, Lisa Roberts is here to just tell us just briefly a little bit about the new math curriculum that's been selected at the high school. Lisa?
year was high school science. And your science team, it was, you have a small enough science department that every one of the science, the teachers who
Math.
teach algebra, oh, sorry, I'm going to go science afterwards.
Okay.
We did 6th grade science and algebra, geometry, algebra 2. Okay? So the entire math team at the high school and our teachers who teach math at high school level math at the middle school were on the team to select materials. We probably started off looking at least 8 different series. And there were quite a number that the state had recommended as being most closely aligned to the standards. And our team decided that they're picking a blended program. So blended means that there is a computer aspect to it and there is a paper aspect to it. They really wanted to find something that was going to meet the wide range of math students that we have coming into high school and to fill in some of the gaps for our kids who are not successful in math right now. And so they're actually really excited. It's got a lot of hands-on, a lot of group work that kids do together, problem solving they do together, but it also has that adaptive computer part that goes down to 6th grade level math standards, so in order to help our kids out. And then the other thing we adopted this year is we've been trying to increase our STEM presence here in North Mason, and this is now our 3rd year into this. And so we added more Project Lead the Way modules at the middle school to 7th and 8th grade, because those are CTE grades. And then we adopted Amplify Science to teach earth science in the 6th grade. Again, it's a blended program. It'll be one-to-one computers in that classroom, but a lot of hands-on activities so that the kids can do simulations on the computers, but they also have real things that they'll be manipulating as well. So I think we are moving forward to increase our STEM presence, have our kids use those computers more. We're not going with the idea that they have to be one-to-one out in their homes, but one-to-one in the classroom. That's what I want to tell you about the 2 things we adopted.
All right.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so. I was going through this the other day, looking how you guys kind of go through how you rate curriculum, I'm assuming.
Can I tell you about that form a little bit?
Sure, I'd love to. I'd love to know more about that.
It needs to be redone.
Okay.
It's dated, and so we'll have a new one for next year, because it's going, when it starts to say what kind of materials, and it includes things like what kind of slides do you need and things like that, it's a little bit dated there. The one thing we have to look at is we have to look for there's no bias whatsoever, and so that in a math adoption, that's usually not an issue. When we looked at it, the criterion we used is that they now have rubrics from the state. What we're really looking for in the different, are they aligned to the Common Core state standards, in this case math on this one? Are they aligned with the mathematical practices? Are they aligned with the career standards? Where do we want kids to be able to be? And those were the criterion that we used when we were actually adopting the materials.
Okay. And that was kind of what I was going to ask in relation to that was, I noticed the criteria for bias as you guys go through that. And I was just kind of was curious as to what your methodology for that is.
Okay, and the bias part of that, that is straight out of the policy, that it says that these are all the areas in which you cannot have bias. Again, because there's the content of 9-12 math and earth science is not something that's going to have all of that.
What would be a bias in?
Well, I guess you could name your people different names ethnically and all of that type of thing. It might look into it, but that's more of an issue in some of the other content areas.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Do you have any comments on that?
Nope.
Okay. So we need to approve that
Yes.
material.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the material that's just been described to us by Lisa.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. Any discussion with that?
No.
I do appreciate the vetting of the material, though.
Mhm.
And I understand that that's dated and stuff, but it's good to see that there is what I would consider an objective form to ensure that.
Who's the person or the people that need to change that form?
Lisa will lead
Oh, okay.
a
Okay.
group. She'll probably invite some instructional staff to help look at that.
Wonderful.
All right.
Okay.
As a slight aside, I did spend some time in a high school algebra class. Whose class?
Jody's.
Yeah, Jody's class. And I will go to the mat on the proposition to people who say our schools are not as good as they were in the old days. Listen, I've got more old days than you do, and I will tell you this. Our math is so superior to what was offered before that there is no comparison. These teachers not only know their subject, but they also know how to deal with students that have math reticence.
All right, thanks. So, no further discussion on that. All those in favor of accepting the new IMC math solution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Boom. All right, budget.
You're up.
Okay, so this is high level because we're still in the early processes of budget, especially since we're still in negotiations. So we're still trying to look and see what is our budget going to look like for 2018-19. But we've been able to pull some preliminary data, and so I can ballpark a lot of the items right now. So that's what we're looking at. So the numbers you're going to be seeing, they're likely not going to be the final numbers, but it's going to be in that range, in that area. So we're going to start with enrollment. What I ended up doing was a 10-year trend just to show where the district's been and where it's going. You can see that starting in 2008-9, we were on the higher end and we dipped fairly significantly in 2012-13. We get new schools, you start seeing the enrollment increase once again. The budget's being prepared off an estimated enrollment of 2,229 FTE. This is about an increase of 36 from this year.
Wow.
And if you look at the last 3 years' trend for an enrollment, that's a conservative estimate of what we're looking at. So as long as things continue the way that they have been over the last 3 years, we can expect to see that as far as our enrollment coming for 2018-19. Staffing, I did something similar for staffing. We broke it up by certificated and classified. Certificated is all certificated staff, so that also includes our administrators with certificates. That's not just teachers. Historically, we had many more certificated staff than we did classified, and you can see over the years the trend is that they've evened out. So now we have just as much classified support as we do certificated individuals as well. The 2018-19 budgeted staffing, we're looking at about 168 certificated staffing. This is an estimated number based upon the positions we would like to fill. Whether or not those are filled, we don't know, because obviously we still have open positions currently. And then classified, that's again an estimate based upon what we would like to do for next year, but it really depends how everything else goes through the summer to determine whether or not we will be able to do that. Now, if everything goes as planned, we would have an increase to staffing of 28 people going into next school year from where we were this year. 2018-19 general fund, so this is again very high level. What we're looking at is about an estimated beginning fund balance of about $2.25 million. And then revenues, I don't know if you guys recall, I think it was a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, that I was estimating that our revenues were going to be about $30 million, and Laura had said that she thought that was a tad bit high. Well, with everything that's come down now with our actual figures, our revenues are going to be around $31.6 million.
Wow.
Calling out Director Bode.
Well, our estimates were good. Our estimates were solid. But our expenditures, when you have increased revenues, you're going to have increased expenditures. Mm-hmm. Our expenditures are looking to be about $31,279. Again, that's really going to be dependent upon negotiations and how all of that goes, because the majority of our expenditures are tied up in salaries and benefits. Mm-hmm. So depending upon what plays out there, we'll see that number change. Then we also have amounts budgeted for transfers out of the general fund. These transfers go into our debt service fund to pay for outstanding debt. Right now we're looking at about $468,000 that would be transferred at that point to ensure that we can pay those obligations. That would leave us with an ending fund balance of about $2,179,000. That is over our minimum 8% fund balance, which is just about 2 million in order to make payroll. The question this poses, though, is as our salaries increase, that minimum increases. So that's a number that's going to fluctuate, and we're going to have to see how everything goes over the summer to make sure that we can maintain that minimum fund balance as set by board policy. Next slide. This is one of my favorite ones. We're looking at budgeted to actual for 16, 17, 17, 18. Now, obviously, 17, 18 has not concluded yet, so this is projected actual. This is trending out where we're at, taking our encumbrances, so those expenses that we know are going to be occurring over the summer, a lot of those are salary-based, trending that out through August 31st to see where we're going to be, and then seeing where we have ourselves set for the budget for 2018-19. A perfect example of some of the impacts from the new legislation, if you look at the local tax line, so the very first blue line, you can see where we were budgeted for local tax collections and what was our actual collections, and then you can see that in 2018-19, that column, it drops down to 3.9. That's our levy rollback. So we're only seeing a portion of that during next year, so it's not as far as what we'll see in the subsequent years, but we will drop to about 3.9 million for levy during 2018-19. You can, oh, go ahead.
What will the levy ultimately end up being?
We will see it sit right around 3.3 million for about 2 years after 2018-19, and then we're going to start seeing it increase. That's based upon trends showing property values in our area increasing.
So the baseline at 3.3.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then you can see the state general apportionment. This is where we're receiving a majority of our extra dollars because of the legislation. So you can see, bless you, you can see we're at 13 million and we start to increase from there. 2018-19, it's currently projected to be at about 18.6 million for our general apportionment. And then our categorical is also going up. This would be our like special education funding and such, that we're going to see the increase there. Our federal's really hard to budget for at this point because not all of the numbers have been released. So we're looking at the numbers that have been released thus far, budgeting based upon those and sort of projecting out what we can expect in some of the other programs. One of the programs that we know is that, one of the federal programs that we know is supposed to be increasing fairly significantly based upon news that's been released is Title II. But we don't have those figures yet, so we don't know how much of an impact we will have in this district with those figures. So those are conservative estimates for our federal amounts. So we're looking at about 2.4 million in federal dollars in 18-19. Other sources, these are our non-high payments, local donations, those type of situations. So that's where we're looking at for our comparison figures. Expenditures by activity, so this is all going into 18-19. This is what it looks like when we break down where our expenditures are going to be. Instruction is about 74%, so we're looking at 23.2 million. Now, when we say instruction, we're not saying that that's salaries. We're saying that's all of the expenditures that we have that support the teaching of our students. So this could be supplies, this could be salary benefits, this could be PD, travel, all of those type of things. We have food service at just under $1 million. And we have transportation at just under 1.6 million. Maintenance and operations is at 2.4 million. So this is basically the cost of making sure our buildings are up, operational, and receiving the maintenance needed to ensure that staff and students are safe in our buildings. Other services, this is basically a catch-all for a lot of the other smaller activities that occur within the district. This could be utilities, electricity, water, internet, all of those type of things that is going to get caught there. Public activities, this happens to do with Feller. So that's a piece of maintaining the running of Feller. You're going to see a change though next year once the preschool goes in there and it's operating truly as an extension of the district as a preschool building. It's been coded historically in the past separately, so we knew what Feller was costing to the district, but now that it's going to be serving an educational purpose for students in the district, it can be coded differently. District support, that is everything from your business office to copiers and all of that. So that's what the $31.2 million looks like when it's broken down by activity. Expenditures by object. So this is when we start looking at how much is going to be instructional salaries, benefits, classified salaries, our supply budgets, our purchase services, travel, and capital outlay. So certificated salaries, this includes everything, okay? So this isn't just base pay. This would be amount of funds for professional development that they end up getting money in their paychecks for. Anything that would be coded basically to our 2000 series object is going to be sitting there in certificated salaries. Classified salaries were just under $5 million. Benefits for both combined, we're looking at about just under $7.4 million. Supplies and materials, so your day-to-day operational supplies at 3.8. Our purchase services is at just over $2 million. Where we see most of our expenditures for purchase services is through our special education department and our specialists that we try to hire within our district, and we simply end up having to contract out because we don't end up with individuals, qualified individuals to fill those positions. So again, that's a moving target, a moving number. If we can fill the positions, then we don't have to contract out. Travel's about 187. That's district-wide for those, travel and expense reimbursements that come in from employees for various travel obligations. Capital outlay. This is a rough estimate for a new roof for Sand Hill. It's very much needed, and so we're putting it in there as a placeholder and seeing what our 18-19 budget looks like for that. We've gotten some estimates. The estimates are coming in at over $500,000, and anytime we have a project of that size on a building of that age, you always know that the second the roof comes off, there's going to be something that comes up. So we need to have some capacity in there in order to ensure that if something does happen, that we have the money to pay for it. So that shows where the money's going when you look at it by the actual object for the 31.2. Then we start getting into our other funds. The capital projects fund, we're going to start seeing this dwindle down with the completion of our projects. So the stadium is what sort of majority of these funds are currently reserved for. Within the 18-19 school year, you would expect that the stadium would either be completely finished or mostly finished by that point. The money that's coming into the capital projects fund, that's the Grapeview School District payment. We only have one left. That was the payment that for their portion of the bond. We only have one payment left. That's $325,000, and then they're done. State match. We have a bit of state match still sitting out there for the rest of these buildings that have not been closed out yet. We also have the state forest dollars that contribute a portion to the capital projects fund. The difficult part with that, as we know, state forest really fluctuates. So we don't want to budget based upon past year trends because we don't know if that's going to be what we're going to be getting in the future, but you would assume that we would get something because historically we have received something each year. So you do an average. When we do that, looks like we're going to be at about $750,000 as far as new dollars to capital projects. We can expect expenditures to range just over $2 million, leaving us with an ending fund balance in the capital projects fund at the end of 18-19 at just under $750,000. Okay. Debt service. This is a work in progress. When we're looking at trends and how the new legislation is going to impact all of our funds, there's some questions on how it's going to impact debt service. A portion of property taxes collected do get routed to our debt service fund. So when we roll back, right now it's showing that we're going to have to roll back some in debt service, meaning our collection for the debt service fund is not going to be as high. We have based upon our long-term debt schedule, we have very specific debt payments. We know what they're going to be next year. They're going to be $3,240,830. That's how much our debt is costing us total. That's the bonds, but that's also our non-voted debt. We have 3 pieces of non-voted debt left, 2 energy loans and then the stadium. So it shows an ending fund balance right now of $127,000 when everything's said and done. That's something we're working through right now to ensure that our revenue sources that we're showing as coming into the debt service fund are actually accurate based upon any potential rollback that would impact the debt service fund. So again, preliminary, we could see that changing. Transportation vehicle fund. I actually got really great news this morning about our transportation vehicle fund. I applied for a grant through the Department of Ecology, and I found out this morning that we were awarded it.
All right.
Yeah, so it's $35,000 towards the purchase of a new bus.
Hey.
New buses cost us about $120,000, likely closer to $130,000 this year with inflation. But I look at it as, a 20-25% discount on a bus. So we're going through the process now of ordering a bus. It's a very lengthy process. We likely won't have it in our fleet till mid to end of next school year, but we'll have that. So when I was doing all of these projections, I did it with the assumption that we would not be receiving the grant, because you don't want to budget before you actually have knowledge that you will get it. So our expenditures will decrease by $35,000. And our revenues, that amount comes from our state depreciation in August. So we know that we are going to be getting $122,894. Now, when we purchase that new bus and that goes onto the depreciation schedule, the amount of revenues for next year will increase, which helps us in future years for our transportation vehicle fund.
Great.
It shows our fund ending balance right under $160,000. Our next bus purchase after this this one that we're doing currently is going to be for a. They have indicated that they would like another special needs bus, so those are cheaper, and so that will likely be in the budget for the following year. So now we have ASB. ASB, we have all of our clubs, athletics, and fundraisers that bring revenue in, and then expenditures obviously can range. But we look like, based upon the ASB budgets that were done by the buildings, it looks like our ending fund balance or beginning fund balance is going to be about $350,000. Our revenues, or what they are expecting to earn this next year, is about $362,000. They've put together plans at each one of the buildings to spend about $373,000, which is a tad bit over their revenue, so they'll dip a bit into their fund balance, not much though, and they'll end with an ending fund balance of about $338,000. So there is a high-level review of where we're at currently with the budget for 18-19. Do you guys have any questions?
No, with the estimated amount of students, what's our capacity? What's that going to do to our buildings?
We are really close to capacity at the elementary schools.
Okay.
We actually built a high school that could take another 250 to 300 students more than we have right now. The middle school, if we adjusted grade configuration at some point, would have more room, but is nearing capacity, but not nearly as much as the elementary. So we have begun to talk to some stakeholders. We need to involve some community members now, but we do have to start talking about what we're doing next, and that would be some work on elementary school buildings, replacement, and potentially additional elementary schools.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, so board development and linkage, superintendent's update.
Yes.
You're on.
I am on. So we are going to start with a report from what I'd like to do is start with a report from Beth about our new program, our MTSS work that we've been doing today. So Beth Bork, our MTSS administrator, beginning in 1819, is going to tell you about the work we've begun supporting students across the district. Thanks, Beth.
I was having issues, like, how am I going to change my slides? I can't give up all that control. So we're going to see if this works. We were going to make it work, but it's working. So thanks for letting me have this opportunity, Dana. I'm really excited to share with you. We just spent 8 hours today with a district leadership team. First time we had representatives from our classified staff and our teacher staff with us. So I want to kind of give you an overview, and we were updating this from things we learned and discussed today. So this is like hot off the press. So I'm really excited. We took a version of this PowerPoint to all of our schools in May and had Dr. Greg Benner from University of Washington. He's with the Center for Strong Schools. He's done a lot of work with Tacoma as they've built over the last 7-8 years their Whole Child Initiative. So I know he had been in the district a few years ago doing professional learning at Hawkins, and we just thought he would be a great person to lead our district down that path, because there's a great need, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. So he was with us today as well, and this isn't the first time you've heard a little bit about this. I know Dana was here last month, and we're calling this our Whole Child, Whole School, Whole Community Initiative. And I'm going to go through a few slides, the why, the how, and the what are we doing. And I don't think this is new to you either, but we're using a multi-tiered system of support to do the work of a whole child, whole school, whole community system. And so you would see this triangle. Usually if you were to Google MTSS, you're going to see a triangle that looks like that but has green, yellow, and red throughout the tiers. We were just tired of seeing that green, yellow, and red, so we thought we'd give it a new shade of color there. But that is what you would see if you went to go read a little bit more information. So when we took this to the schools and we wanted to, we call this awareness presentation, we wanted our staff to know, why are we doing this? And then how exactly are we going to pull it off? And then what are some of the details? So we pulled this, from a TED Talk, Simon Sinek, if you've read his book or seen those. So let me start a little bit with the why. Social emotional learning, SEL, is what we're another new acronym that we're starting to use widespread in school systems. But if you were to look at the orange, the green, and the yellow in the middle, I know as a parent, these are things that stand out to me that are very important things for my 3 boys to learn to become productive citizens in our society. So across the nation, there's a lot of research that's been going on for several years, and the science is showing us that these are the 5 skills that if we can really focus on these in our schools and with our young ones, that our kids are going to be more productive members of society and be able to be resilient and have the grit that we want them to. So there are states that have adopted these 5 as standards, and they're actually creating, standards in the schools for what would a kindergartner need to do to show that he's learning some self-management skills. I think, we might be heading in that direction, but we're using this framework in our Whole Child Initiative to say, okay, well, let's just at least have discussions and make sure we're using curriculum that is focusing on this for our kids. So that is just a beginning tool that we're using to guide our work with social emotional learning. There is a lot of research that's done. You can see the source down there at the bottom, that if we can focus on social emotional learning, it's going to have impact on the academic learning as well. And research has shown that even just making those changes with SEL, you can have an 11% gain on the academic standardized assessments that we do give our students. So there is a benefit to the whole child, not just academics, but it's going to build all of their skills if we can really increase their social emotional skills as well. And then also those reduced risks, we build those skills in them, and we're going to have fewer of those conduct behavior, unsafe behaviors that we do see in our schools a lot. So benefits on both ends.
I asked Deanna, I said, what is our school board's, knowledge and experience with hearing about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? Our staff has learned a lot about it in the last few years, but I just wanted to put this in part of our why, because as my first year at North Mason, assistant principal at Belfair Elementary, I have lived this with our staff. We have students in our schools who have, many of these things we don't even know that are going on in their life. But they have ACEs, and we often feel like we're seeing the impact of those ACEs in their life as they're in our classes and struggling with the day-to-day activities we need them to do to be students. So for us as educators and living this in the classrooms, we don't know who the kids are that have 6 or more ACEs, but the science shows if a student has 6 out of those 10 ACEs, they're going to be at severe risk of not only acting out and being unsafe in our classrooms, but the academic deficits are going to be there as well. So this is, a little bit dated research, but in 2010 in the state of Washington, they were showing, 58% of our students, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this the backwards way. A lot of our students have the ACEs that are impacting their academic progress. So this is part of our why we want to focus on the social emotional as we build that triangle of multi-tiered system of support. Not to say we're going to put academics on the back burner. We have a lot of great initiatives going on there. We're still going to continue that work, but we're going to take a very focused approach with building the social emotional side of the triangle as well. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So this is a lot of the work we spent today. Dr. Benner gave us what he recommended, that he's worked with a lot of other districts, an 8-year plan. And we haven't yet dug into the nuts and bolts, and is this plan going to work for North Mason? But it's a place for us to start. So that is the work that our district leadership team is starting to say, okay, year 1, exploration. We've done a lot of these things this year. Dr. Benner's been with our admin and counselor team 3 other days, learning, helping us understand the why and the how a little bit more. And we're going to do more exploration, but we're also going to dabble into some of the installation. We want to get going. Our staff, after we brought this presentation to them, every single one of our buildings voted, we want to start as soon as possible. No one wanted to delay the start. So we're going to jump in with as many of the pieces as we can in August. That's our plan. So we're going to continue to refine our long-term plan, but this was a starting point for us.
What are the benchmarks that are going to be identified to make sure that year 6, we find out this isn't effective?
Mm-hmm.
Or even before then?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different, that's what I love about a multi-tiered system of support, is not only are they actions you put in place, but they're very data driven. So our district improvement plan and school improvement plans are all going to be directly correlated to the actions we put in here. So essentially this is going to in part be our improvement plans and the data we're collecting. We already collect data on office discipline referrals, attendance rate, the academics. So some of those pieces are going to be there. We're going to continue measuring and hope to see the increase or the decrease that we want. There might be a few new pieces that we start collecting, and I might get into that here as well. So it's part of the plan for sure. So here is a basic overview of the structure of this system. Right now, all the way at the top, the district leadership team, I told you that's who is on there now. And that is all of our district office administrators, at least one administrator from each building. We have a secondary teacher, Brian Barker, representing secondary as well as his special ed background. And then Telia Ford is an elementary teacher at Belfair Elementary that volunteered. So we have them both on there, as well as our 2 classified staff and a counselor as well to represent the district leadership team. So next we are under there, and these are not all teams that are formed right now. But eventually you can see we want a community leadership team, and what's that going to look like? And we want a family engagement leadership team to function under these same systems that we have here. the next step for us is the building leadership teams. So we're working on, we have them semi-formed, and we're going to be doing some training with them in August. We already have those planned. All the way to the right where it says District Advanced Tiers Team. So if you remember back to that triangle, the Tier 2 and Tier 3 are the triangles at the top. Those are students who are our most struggling students, whether it's academic, behavior, or social emotional. We're going to be forming a team to help support our schools on what other learning and skills do we need to get to those students to help them reach the benchmarks we have as well. So this is just a long-term plan of the team structure that we're putting together. And 2 tools, this is a data collection, really fidelity, but it also is helping us know what are the action steps we need to take to put in place. So these are blueprints, I guess you want to say, one for our district team and then our building teams as well. So that would be great data we can start bringing to you to see where are we at in the implementation phase. We've used the building team, the TFI, Tiered Fidelity Inventory, in a few of our schools to measure some of our behavior intervention supports. And when we used it at Belfrail Elementary, for example, it showed that we had 50% of the structures in place that we needed to be a fully implemented system. So, I mean, and that's just for the behavior. That's not the social emotional piece. So our hope is we're going to get more pieces in place next year to get to 100% implementation. And then we should start seeing the benefits of that. So those will be tools we can report back on. Just a real brief, so we have tools to build the teams, and then we're going to really structure all of the teams, the district and the building level teams, to go through this process of how do we decide when to make changes. Is this working? Is it not working? What do we need to try next? So this is a professional learning for all of the teams to learn how to go through this process in each of our meetings that we have. So a few pieces of the what are we going to do. I put this slide in here today, and the visual isn't from our district, but Dr. Benner used it today in some examples. You might see at either one of our elementaries or even at Hawkins, we have some standards, expectations already laid out for our students. At Hawkins, they use PAWS, and the PAWS stands for something. At the elementaries, we have be respectful, make good decisions, solve problems. And those are some expectations we have, and we teach our students what does that look like and sound like all throughout our building. So we're going to expand on that. We're not going to ask our schools to change those. But what we worked on today as a district team is what's one expectation that we have for all of our students in the whole district, so that we can at least have one common piece in all of our schools. And the high school is going to be building a similar system. So we spent a lot of time today brainstorming, what do our parents want? What do our community members want of our students? And we came down after a voting process. These were some really big things that stood out to us. We felt we are kind, we are respectful, we are resilient, and we are scholars, or we are learners. Those were really important things to us. Our next step is does this match with our community and our parents? So we have a team that's going to go out over the summer and start collecting information, asking that question. Because we'd like to at least narrow it down to one that is kind of a common pillar that all of our schools can build their expectations from. Here is another big agreement, a decision we made today. Not only do we want to have those common expectations that we teach our kids what we expect to see in our buildings, but we felt like these were 4 really important things we'd like to see in all of our buildings, and be really strategic about making sure that we do this. So we talked about youth leadership, and how can our youth help creating the graphics, make videos to show the kids, or just be involved in this whole process of becoming good citizens. So we want to make sure that's a focus for us. Warm welcomes, just the criteria that when every student comes to school in the morning, there's at least 4 people, 4 adults that welcome them in a warm way. And that would be our goal. We want at least 4 people to see that kiddo before school starts. And same on their way home, optimistic goodbyes. We do a lot of this already, but I think with us being really intentional and saying that that's a focus for us this year, we're going to get even better at it. And so those were the first three, and the last one is some social emotional checks. I may have put an example in here. We're doing some of these things in our elementaries already, but zones of regulation is something a lot of our teachers and our counselors are teaching kids. You know, you come in the morning and you might place your name on one of these 4 colors, and that gives the teacher kind of an idea of where that kiddo's at right now, and we might have to connect throughout the day. But it really, ultimately what it's doing is teaching kids to start that self-regulation piece and that self-awareness piece that is really important for their learning and growing, just being able to name their feelings. So we're feeling like that those are 4 common things we want to see in all of our schools, and then we're going to leave the building leadership teams to make their own decisions about what do we want to do on top of that. What's important at Belfair Elementary? What's important at North Mason High School and James Taylor? So they're going to get to add to that to make it what they need at their building. Okay, I think I have 1 or 2 more. Here's just another example of some things that we're going to do. We have what we call a matrix already at our elementaries, and at Hopkins uses our pillars on the side. This is not ours, it's an example. But what we want to focus on as we look at the ones we already have are there visuals there. And this, to some people, might look, oh, well, this looks like it's for a kindergartner or a first grader. But Dr. Benner gave us the example, and we reflect, even as adults, we rely on visuals, a stop sign. We don't have to read the words on the stop sign. When we just see that red octagon, we know what it means. So especially for our ELL students, having the visuals as part of our teaching and matrix is going to be really important. So we're going to add that in and kind of revamp and make sure it works for all of our students. And last but not least, just some next steps. So our district leadership team, again, we have a lot of action items. I shared a couple of them with you tonight, but we're going to be doing some work over the summer. We have some work teams together, and we're going to get back on August 15th and pick up where we left off. And then building leadership teams, I see I didn't put the date in there, but they are meeting in August as well to start going through those blueprints that we're going to use and start making some building level decisions to get this system in place. That's a real brief overview of a big topic.
I have maybe a comment.
Yeah.
Maybe from a community standpoint. And I don't know if it can be implied in this or not, but one of the things I most liked about my kids' time at Belfair, and for some reason it was stopped, and I don't understand why, but they were focused on the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And, you know, it had it up everywhere. And all of a sudden those disappeared. And I think those are really good.
Sure.
To instill. I mean, even as an adult going in there, it's always a good reminder, oh yeah, you know, I always looked at them, and it's always kind of a check on yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that went away.
Well, I don't know the history on that as well,
Yeah.
but I know, and I don't know much about because it's a program that you purchase into and you get materials to go along with it. But what I do know is, I mean, I've seen the poster, there's still a couple posters hanging up in the school, and they are interesting to read. If you look at what those 7 habits are, those could easily be applied into what are our expectations.
Right.
So and then it's not even a program we have to spend money on.
Well, and that's where I look at it. I mean,
But-
if it's already been established, why reinvent the wheel? And I think those encompass just about everything that you guys are looking at up there for all those things. And then the other one I guess I would have is when he talked about, you know, what works for Sand Hill, what works for Belfair, what works for Hawkins. I guess my only, I guess, comment on that was make sure they complement each other, so you don't end up with the division of, well, these are the Sand Hill kids, these are the Belfair kids, these are the
Right.
Hawkins kids.
Yeah.
They're all North Mason kids. They're all.
Yeah.
It goes back to that whole community.
Yeah.
So-
No, those are great comments, and that's one thing that I'm excited about, hoping to be able to kind of guide our building leadership teams, because I'll be overseeing,
Oh, good.
you know, all of it and hearing those conversations. And I think part of that is making sure we all come to an agreement of at least one pillar that is district-wide. But then also because our kids do, I had a great conversation with a staff member the other day, our kids move back and forth so often. So I think it's important that Belfair and Sandhill kind of collaborate on some of these as they're making these decisions. And also, you know, once we get to students who need more of a tier 2 or tier 3 intervention and we build those systems, making sure that they can communicate as kids are moving, because oftentimes our kids who have significant intervention needs might move to the other school. So making sure we have a great communication, data tracking plan for that as well. So, nope, thank you.
Anybody
Anything
else?
else?
I don't want to be the only one who talks.
If I got it right, this sounds to me like it goes along with the kind of thing I was talking about before. This is the precondition for learning. These are preconditions for learning. And if this is another, since I'm out among the public, I hear things about schools. They're often negative things, and they're not correct. One doesn't want to go too far in lecturing one's constituents. But it is good to be well informed. And I think this is sort of the invisible army. This is a program that seems to me creating the conditions in which it's possible for kids that are of all sorts of and conditions themselves to advance. And this was not something that was present way back then.
It's true.
So I'm very encouraged. I've learned something this evening, and I've got another thing to tactfully enter into my conversations as I talk to people. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think it's wonderful, and part of like some of the stuff that they've already implemented that I have finally got at my home, so that we like to do things at home that the like Sandhill are doing, so that everything can be the same and he's not shocked when he gets home or shocked when he gets to school. So, but I would have never got the stuff if it would have just been given to him. So he would just give it to my kid. He sticks it in, I don't know how he does this, but he folds it like it's been in there for 40 years. It's like welded to the bottom of his backpack. So, but what they did with a lot of these is they laminated things and sent them home. And so they were a little bit more structured. So I think parents being able to get those things and being able to, it's their choice, but being able to use what the school is using is really, really, that's that community part, right?
Yep.
Getting it involved, so.
Yeah, we want it to be seen everywhere in the community, so that's going to be one of our action steps, is doing an awareness presentation like this
Yeah.
in our community and different events like that, so.
Very cool.
Get it out there.
Love it.
Well, as a Belfair parent, I want to thank you for the last year
Thank
of
you.
school. I think it should be reflected negatively in the superintendent's evaluation of moving her to a different
Well,
position.
thanks a lot.
You're welcome. But no, your presence was definitely felt this last school year in the building level. So we
Thanks.
thank you for that.
It was a
You have
great
to
year.
remember now we'll get to fill her presence in all of our sites.
Well, that's good for everybody else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next up for you.
Yes, next up. So we have a change order. It's kind of the final change order there on the Hawkins renovations, things that we are getting a little bit of refunds, but things that came up during the purchase process that ended up costing us more as well. So this is kind of rounding out that piece, and as we submit this, then we'll get some of our remaining match money back as well. So we're coming finally to the end of reconciling all the dollars for those big construction projects. So we are asking that you approve the change order as written.
I do have a couple questions on the change order, and because I'm looking at the line items on it, and I don't know necessarily what is why things go in and things. I've never understood with construction, if people build a lot of buildings, how you can end up with mistakes that seem fairly big.
Yeah.
But almost $200,000 seems like a lot of money in change orders, and I'm sort of concerned by that.
Well, you know,
Well,
and
not sort
I
of,
can
really
get you
am.
the exact figures, but it's actually a pretty small percentage that we spend on change orders on both projects,
Mhm.
smaller than is typical. so I don't have those percentages, but I will get those for you, because, yeah, the dollar amounts are really big. You know, I don't even buy houses that cost that much. So, but, or don't really want to anyway. But our overall percentage of changeovers is smaller than the state average for
Okay.
the entire project, and I can get you those exact dollar amounts.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that and then I look at what the roof is gonna cost at Sand Hill, and it's like, man,
I
it's
know.
almost a third of
I
that,
know.
so.
And some of the things that were particularly difficult at, you know, when it's not a brand new building, you're going to run into more things that are problems that were existing than when you're starting with a blank slate. So, and there were things like in this one, like the moisture protection in the walls, that the exterior, you know, that was about $20,000 that they couldn't get the walls to dry out from the rain to be able to paint them. And so there was, and then the layers of stuff that there was just a lot of extra work that wasn't part of the original description of the job. And that happened in many areas on this project. That's also the wall furring is part of that too in the gym. That's where the liquid was
Oh, okay.
getting somehow coming out inside the gym after we thought everything was dry, and how did they get all that concrete really dry so it could get painted. And there were a lot of extra expenses related to moisture, particularly in the old building.
All right, so, and you need an approval for us for that? I will accept a motion to
Mr.
accept
Chairman, I
this
so
change.
move that we accept the change order with the explanation our superintendent has given us.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. Thank you for the explanation. I do appreciate it.
I'll get
All-
you those percentages.
Great, I appreciate it. All those in favor of accepting the change orders, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Community linkage is next.
You don't have a budget, or was, oh, that was all you, okay.
No, it's all her.
Oh, you wanna do that? now?
Yeah, why don't you do that? I thought you skipped something.
Well, you went past me, I'm thinking, okay, it's your presentation, you can do it whatever order you want.
Okay, so this is just our regular monthly update. You're gonna see that things are a tad bit different. Like I had promised last month, I was able to get our new budget financial software up and running. And so you're gonna see that some of the material that we're presenting is in a different format than you're normally used to seeing. What I wanna start with though is our other funds outside of general fund. So our budget status for our capital projects fund for the month of May, we are ending at about $2.7 million. You're gonna see a pretty significant decrease from April to May. We paid out 700 and something thousand for the stadium project. So big chunk came out for the project and the completion of the restrooms and the concession stands and such. Debt service, we had a collection of taxes, so you'll see a big jump there, but June 1st was our debt service payment, so you're gonna see a big decrease come the end of June. ASB, we're at 352,000. You're gonna see that jump due to end of the year deposits. And then the transportation vehicle, we just cut a check that we're waiting to be cashed for that new engine for that bus. We finally got the invoice to get paid, and that was 22,000. So we're gonna see that drop to 30 something. And then next we have enrollment. So this is our enrollment through June. So June, we're ending at about 2,169. This is because of, you know, the early graduation, you know, students weren't there on count date because of that. So we always see that decrease, that dip in June. So that's what I have for the other funds and for enrollment. Now, what I'm excited to share with you guys
I'm excited for this too.
are the report that I was able to pull with our new software. Now, with that being said, I can get a lot of data from this system. I did not give it all to you because I didn't want to overwhelm you, but what I am asking is that if you guys have a chance, once you guys have looked at all of this and once I've presented this information, if there's any of this that you feel is not necessary or you don't necessarily need on a monthly basis, let me know. I'll trim it down. We don't have to present all of this. This is literally done at the click of a button. So it's not time consuming for me, and I can pull stuff out if you don't need it. So what you're seeing across the top in that green, pink, purple, and blue is sort of where we're sitting based upon prior year trends and our actual revenues. This first sheet that you're seeing is our general fund revenue sheet. So our projected year-end balance as a percent of budgeted expenditures is right at about 11.5%. And then you look and see that our trend for year-to-date revenues were above our prior year trend, and our local sources of revenue and our state sources of revenue, we're looking at the same thing. We're over in both of those. That's, of course, because of that increased enrollment, so those extra dollars coming in. The top 10 sources of revenue, this I thought was actually really interesting when we were able to pull this. The work that was done for State Forest. This is what I wanted to point out particularly. If you go down about 5 spots, you'll see State Forest $829,000. This is normally a deductible revenue, and because of the work that was done, this is something that's going to be given back to school districts that are earning this revenue. That is extremely significant for a district of this size. Now again, that's not something we can budget for, but it's showing that in our current year that it's our 5th highest source of revenue is the State Forest dollars. The rest of it, you can see it starts to dwindle down quite significantly after that. We get our money from non-high participation a little bit from LEA, our federal forests, and our impact aid. Our total revenues, that the chart right underneath our top 10, so you see the different shades of blue and purple, we're looking at our budget, our trend year to date, and our current year to date. So our revenues that were actually budgeted are there in the the light blue and then dark blue, purple. So our current year to date, you're seeing that we're right there on track. We'll end up being over our total end of the year budgeted revenues by the time we finish collecting for June, July, and August. We still have 3 months left. Our revenues by source for prior year to date versus current year to date. So that's your next top little module there. You can see most of our revenues are coming in through state sources. Your prior year to date is that where the cursor is currently, and your current year to date, you can see we're significantly over what was originally where we were at this point last year. Our local revenues were a tad bit under where we were last year at this time, and our federal were pretty much smack dab even. Our revenues by source, our trend year to date versus our current year to date. So this is just showing how we're trending, and we're trending for our state above where we had in previous years, which is what we've expected based upon enrollment. Our next sheet goes into the same type of information, but it's on the expenditure side. So it shows that our projected year-end balance based upon our budgeted expenditures is right at about 11.4%. That mirrors our revenues. And then you get the same slides for our actual year-to-date expenditures, our salaries and benefits, and our basic education allocation. So our year-to-date salaries and benefits, currently we're trending at about 77%. This time last year, we were at about 75.8%, so we're over where we were last year. Our top 10 expenditures broken down, basic education, and then obviously special education is up there towards the top. From other reports that I've given in prior months when I was stating that some of the reasons we were over in our budgeted expenditures was due to an increase in our higher needs students. That's where we're seeing that increase is in that special education services expense line item. Business office, a lot gets grouped into there, such as our utilities and water, electricity, lease fees, all of that. And then we have pupil transportation. Transportation's actually trending pretty good this year. We're looking at about breaking even, which is pretty good for transportation. Transportation, you're normally in the red. Doesn't look like we're going to end the year at that. School food service, Michelle's done a wonderful job. We're currently in the black for food service, so we're basically breaking even, which is perfect.
Unheard of.
Exactly. Her claim for May was the highest claim that this district has had ever. So it was just over 100,000, and that is extremely significant. If you look at the total expenditures of 787,000, we were paid 100,000 for the month of May. So that shows the increase of participation in our food service program. Our expenditures by fund for budget trend year to date and current year to date, same thing. With 3 months left of expenditures, you're going to see our end of the year expenditures. We're going to end up being over budgeted for this year. We're going to end up having to do a budget extension. That's due to our Feller project, to increased for need for our special education students, and maintenance. Things break that we unfortunately can't budget for.
Like engines?
Yeah.
Like engines, like riding lawnmowers, you know, pretty much anything that could possibly break. And then, you know, project costs like doing Feller and then finding out we have the rats in the attic and having to do the change order for that, those type of situations. When you're looking at the expenditures by object, this goes into the first column is our budgeted, the second, the blue or the purple, is where we're currently at. So for that month. So you can see our certificated salaries are higher than what we had budgeted. And our classified salaries are also higher than budgeted. If you go down that line, every single one of our columns for salaries and benefits is higher than what was budgeted. This is due to increases in pay, increases in staffing, and our negotiated increases for PSE from going into last year that was retro to, or that was given out in January. Our expenditures by object for our trend year to date versus our current year to date, for the most part, you can see that they're fairly even up until you get to purchase services. Again, this is where we're seeing those specialty positions that we weren't able to fill that we ended up having to contract out for. So you can see that the purchase services are much higher for this current year than they had been in the previous year.
We would be paying that money anyway, regardless if it was in
Correct.
purchase services versus salaries,
Correct.
right? So it's, I mean,
It'd just be in a
Just
different
a
budget.
different-
Yes.
item.
A lot of times, individuals, when they see that it's in purchase services, they can feel sensitive to that because it's not technically an employee of the district. It's a company that we're sending money to.
And our preference is to have
Correct.
employees, not contracted
Contractors.
services.
Yes.
So we keep working really hard at turning that trend around where it is developing.
And Tom is doing a really good job as far as looking into next year, and if there are positions that we are having a difficult time hiring, trying to work with firms that will staff us with a position that gives us the option to hire.
okay.
Sometimes there's costs associated with that, so obviously that has to be weighed. But we're trying to go with firms that have a lower cost, so if everything works out, then that individual can become our employee. So that's a way that we're trying to work around this as well. It's sort of like trial by fire at that point. But obviously we have the positions posted. We're trying to fill them. If we can't, then, and we obviously need that person.
Right.
We need that service. We go through the purchase service route. Okay. So general fund, this is sort of a fun chart. Your solid line is your current year, your projected amount. So basically all the way up through May is where we were at current year. Then June, July, and August are all projected based upon trends that have gone out to August 31st. So it sort of shows you where we're going to end up as far as our fund balance. Our dotted line is our prior year. So it shows you how we're trending based upon where we were at this time last year as well. And then lastly, this gets into a lot more details as far as where we are at as a district, broken down by much more details as far as local tax collection, our state general purpose, so our apportionment payments, our federal collection for grants. And then it shows you your prior year to date, where you were this time last year, your prior year actual, and then your year-to-date percent of actual. So that shows you, are you going to be collecting the same amount or expending the same amount that you were last year, or are you going to be over or under? And then the overall net effect, so your surplus or deficit, is going to be seen there in the red for your annual budget for your expenditures. So when I was saying that we would need to do a budget extension, that's what I'm talking about, is that number in the red. And then this is looking at May and saying, okay, if we were going to be ending the month right now, or the ending of the year right now, our ending fund balance is going to be 3.166 million. Now, we just had our large tax collection period in April and May. So that's why we're seeing that increase there in our fund balance, because we just brought those revenues in. Then we turned around and we paid out a significant chunk to debt service for our debt payments. So that's what I have here. Did you guys have any questions regarding the information being presented?
No.
No, and actually, I think that you shouldn't take anything off of this form, because not only does, if we have questions later, we can recall it by looking at this.
Perfect.
But it also makes it more transparent, where people in the community, not only they could answer their own questions by looking at this, but if they had a question, they can make it more specific when they
Perfect.
call you with this form. So I wouldn't take anything off of it.
Perfect. And I really appreciate that advice. I personally really love this
I
information.
really love, what is the system that you use? What is the?
It's called Forecast 5, and it really allows us to dig into our numbers.
Yeah.
And instead of just seeing this big pot of dollars or expenses, really dig into it and see where is everything going? Where can we make improvements? Where can we make changes? And allows us to pinpoint that and really work towards bettering our financial position from year to year.
Yeah, and it's not like some 40-page book.
Mm-mm.
It's just right there in
Yep.
a few pages. It's great. I love it.
It would be nice if it was a little bit bigger.
The font.
The font.
Yeah.
I will see what I can do about
Okay.
that.
Not that my
But
eyes
you
are
can
getting older. or
also,
anything.
just kind of control and then do this, and then it
Does
or
it?
you can just do this, like this. You don't even have to hit control.
Just
You
like
just
this.
go, "Wah," and it,
Yeah,
like-
when it prints on,
Yeah.
Oh,
do
there it
that,
is. Oh, there it is.
okay, because
All
when
right.
it prints on paper,
Thank
it
you.
does try to fit everything to one page.
Yeah.
But when I import it in, I import it into Excel. And so when I'm looking at it, it's obviously much larger than when we're seeing it in printed version.
Does it convert to Excel? Just it already has a conversion, like you just hit convert to Excel, and you don't have to do
Yeah,
something
that's
special.
that's one of the really great things
I
about
love it.
this is the reports in the past, they were all done manually by hand. So I would sit there and go
Yeah.
through and cut and paste a bunch of analytics and data from the system into Excel, then back into Word. I heard about this through networking with some other districts, and they said you have to do this, especially for districts our size where time is limited. This will just be life-saving for you. And I attended a presentation, and he monthly board reports, click, 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 and I was like, what?
Is it
Mind blown.
incredibly expensive to use?
No.
Is it? Oh, that's
Nope,
cool. That's
nope,
even
it's
better.
not. And the price for the software is based upon your district FTE.
And now
So,
can only schools use this?
this software is currently for schools, but it's nationwide.
Oh.
And so they just have a very strong support in Washington State because of the new legislation and the fact that they work directly with OSPI. So like our OSPI 4-year trend model that was created, this software has imported all of that data. So what it also looks at is birth rates, death rates, all property value increases from year to year. It will also do our 4-year budget with the click of a button, with some certain, we put in certain percentages and increases and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But this is gonna make making sure that we meet the standards that have been dictated by this new legislation a lot easier.
That's so
Plus,
great.
it's a much more efficient way for us to do some forecasting.
Yep.
And it's, instead of having to pay a forecast company to tell us what our birth trends are gonna be and how that's gonna impact the district, we can just get that as part of our licensing fee with the company.
Mhm.
So.
And when we're, just for transparency purposes, this software, it costs $15,000. So we're not talking an exorbitant amount of
Yeah.
money to get this. And the fact that this will allow us to really ensure that we're meeting all of the OSPI requirements in the future is huge.
Yeah.
This also allows us to trend out against other districts. So it will have it imports all of the other districts' data as well through OSPI, because all of the data is reported to OSPI. OSPI reports all the data to Forecast 5. So we can pull all of that data. So let's say, we're in negotiations and we want to know what South Kitsap doing with XYZ. All of that data is there.
Wow.
So it's extremely helpful.
That is so great.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Perfect.
Awesome.
I'm glad you guys like it.
Are there things you do to manage the high that comes with your position?
Yeah, look at more numbers.
A great response. I just wanted to add that this, in connection with what I've said before, I am also asked from time to time, and I'm sure my colleagues are, where's this money going? How do we know, et cetera, et cetera. Let me invite you to ask your question to the right source. And then I could direct them to places on our webpage or wherever that allows them to get more than the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's right there in our package, so
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
easy.
It
Yeah.
makes it helps us be more transparent, and it also helps us give more solid reason
Yeah.
for establishing why our community should trust us.
Exactly. And one of the things I really like about this is this data is pulled directly from our system. So this isn't something where the finance director is going in and putting numbers into a spreadsheet and then presenting it as the numbers. This is literally directly from Skyward. I do a monthly upload, and it pulls it and then populates everything. So this is real live data directly from our system to show where we're at that point.
That's
So,
fantastic.
Thank you, Ashley. That's
Perfect.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Do you have anything else? In your report? Okay. So, community linkage planning and message of the month. My plan is I'm so looking forward to it. I'm going to be on vacation coming up. So my goal is to actually make some use of that time to attend the commissioner meetings for North Mason and Central Mason Fire Authority, as well as hopefully get to a county commissioner meeting, and with the whole goal of kind of giving commendation to, especially the what do I call it, the mock car accident, and maybe just to share a little bit about what we're doing as well. So that's my goal for July at least.
Oh, okay, so there is an article. And we always say there's no article.
No July article.
Oh, I thought you said you were gonna write about that.
No,
I
I'm
just
going to
said
attend
talk to
those
him.
meetings.
Oh,
Those commissioner meetings. and-
Good.
Yeah.
Okay,
But we
I get it
do
now.
have our newsletter coming out soon, and it will feature graduation
Yeah.
That's so great. That's awesome.
and the MTSS work that we're doing.
That's so great.
All right. So we have no July
Nope.
letter, but Leanna, you're up for August.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not busy or anything, but
Yeah.
no, I am. But send me your recommendations. Anybody wants to send me recommendations, I will make it happen.
Sounds
Sure.
good.
Well, if I were to come up with one right now, I would say some add-on to this, if you could give some brief version of this accounting thing. It's another
Oh,
way of
yeah.
letting the people know
Budget.
that we are transparent and there are ways for them to participate in that.
You know, I'm terrible with money, and I like to go, thrift shopping and whatever. I mean, my husband just hates it, and budget has never been like, oh, I woke up one day and was like, I love budget, let's go do it. But every time I dive into numbers and budget and whatever, that's my favorite. I'm like on fire for it. So yeah, that might be a great one.
And you can work with
Be good.
Ashley on that.
Oh, I would definitely. Yeah, we'll be hanging out.
All right, so moving on into the, what do we call this? The assurance of organizational performance and policy review. We have two policies to review. One is the E1, which is the district mission, as well as the superintendent's report on that.
Yeah, I have a kind of a brief report on this one, and we haven't had a report in a couple of years because we did an update to our district mission and vision about 4 years ago. But in light of the work that we've been doing at the behest of our teachers and our other staff, and how can we better meet the needs of our kids who are most fragile or most struggling in our buildings, and the work we've started with the multi-tiered system of support, district team and building teams, and as we move forward, the idea of looking beyond our test scores, which basically have been the focus in the past of our school district mission and vision, to really taking a good look at the whole child, and some of the work that we've started to do, we've talked about here before with this group, but perhaps changing our mission more to address that work, and maybe even the phraseology that we've looked at in the past, whole child, whole school, whole community. But I'd really recommend that we revisit that language. There will be some work that working group as part of the MTSS leadership team will be doing this summer, with getting some input from community members that I think would be a nice lead up to perhaps some study sessions or community focus groups we could do in the fall around changing our mission and vision, and make that some of the work of the board in the next several months. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, I like it.
Sounds good.
I think mission statements are great on paper, but
They get outdated very
they get
quickly.
outdated. You know, I think if you have something that is concise and sends a message that everyone can say yes, you know, and I think it's pretty. I've always enjoyed the educate, empower, and inspire. But at the same time, I do like this whole child, whole school, whole community. There's just something about that, you know.
Well, and I think we're unique in North Mason because our schools, more than many places, really are the center of the community. And we should build on that strength
Yeah.
in ways that maybe we haven't done as much of as we can. So,
Yeah, and I'd like it part of a bigger conversation with regards to strategic planning and things like
Yes.
that. But definitely think a new mission
starting
statement
place.
is.
No, I don't think we wear out our mission statement. This district burns through them.
So, okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to accept the monitoring report E1.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the monitoring report as given and as explained by our superintendent.
I agree.
Okay, any discussion? I guess we already did that. So all those in favor of accepting E1?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and now E4 is school engagement.
yeah, and this is one we've been kind of playing with the data that we present in the past couple of years, and trying to use some different things. But really what we're looking at here is, do our kids feel like they belong at school? What opportunities do they have to expand their horizons? What is their attendance like? These are the pieces that we monitor. And one of the things that you'll notice is, as you look at the different data from different buildings, we'll have a club at a building that will have some students one year, and the next year it won't, then it might again, because interests wane and interests grow again. And so it is a kind of flexible thing. But I think it is, you know, I wouldn't say it's not something we want to keep looking at, because we want to know what are the interests of our kids in their schools and what keeps them participating. And the board has considered that things that students will do that show that they're engaged are be participating in co-curricular and extracurricular activities, that they will be at school, that we're working on, that they'll have employability skills and those kinds of things. So I think these are still the right things to report on. We've been working with our staff on a variety of different tools to use, and last year we looked at a chart from our homeroom program that looks at attendance, and in this case now we have a 6-year comparison, and you can see some ups and downs in student attendance rates. But I think overall we have positive participation. There are areas we'd like to see some things grow. One of the things that continues to be a focus is looking at the participation of female students in interscholastic sports activities. And for that reason, Mr. Swafford does his girls' sports experience that today was the last day for this year. And so that's been a pretty powerful influencer, something that we'll continue to do. Those kinds of things help us bring that around. Another thing that's going to be different next year, and it'll be interesting to see what the data looks like many other, or as a group, the middle schools in our sports league took a look at their seasons and decided, for a number of reasons, partially for use of fields, but for us, one of the bigger benefits is, you know, in our community, not everybody can afford to pay the extra fees for participating in a travel team in the sport they love, or an elite team, or some of the different levels of teams. It's, as you know, very expensive out of pocket for families. So the middle schools changed the seasons for the sports, and the effect of that for us is two things. It helps with field availability, which was really part of what all the districts were looking at. But it also provides an opportunity, if kids want to specialize a little bit in a sport, which many kids and their families choose to do these days, and have that opportunity to have multiple levels of experience. For our kids now, for example, if we look at football, so we've changed at the middle school the fall and spring seasons, so they're opposite of the high school. So what that means is when the high school's doing football in the fall, the middle school will be doing baseball. And when the high school's doing baseball in the spring, the middle school will be doing football. But then when the community, and then that will align so that the kids then can do, for example, a football player can do Pee Wee football if they're middle school level in the community in the fall and play football in the spring. Or a baseball player can play baseball in the fall and play Pop Warner or what the other baseball in the spring. So they have lots of different opportunities. And we're thinking that that will give our kids the opportunity to develop some skill levels that are comparable to the kids they compete against that have a lot of outside opportunities. So that was part of the reason that we voted yes when the middle schools took that vote. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Is there was there part of that discussion though, and I guess I like the idea, especially from the fact of, you know, when it comes to baseball, football, you can have a coaching from middle school to football.
Well, and that's part of it too.
And
Now
stuff like that.
our high school coaches can help more with middle school, and our middle school coaches can help more with high school because their
But-
sports are at different seasons.
But one thing I could see running into is the multi-sport athlete, if they are playing baseball and football, you know, at
Yeah.
the middle school in the same season. So,
And that's tough.
mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I entertain a motion to accept E4.
I think we should do it.
Okay.
I do too.
All right. Discussion?
No.
And I do have a comment. It's good to see the numbers going up, the participation. The older I get, the more focus on academics, I get, but understanding the student I was, if it wasn't for sports, I would have done worse than I already did in high school. And I know for a lot of kids, that's the reason they show up, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent. And so having those programs, having that outlet, it's positive. And I'm glad to see that the school is dynamic, you know, when you see a trend, jumping on it rather than being a year too late or 2 years too late. So, all right. All those in favor of accepting E4, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against, motion carries. Cool. Policy review, the agenda planning.
I got nothing on that.
Yeah, we looked over that before, and everything seems in order. We discussed it. We had a first reading of it, and we didn't find anything amiss.
And that is just a discussion, and I have nothing to add to the agenda planning. I think it works very well, and as things come up, I think we're pretty quick to make changes as we need to. So, all right, so we will go into the adjournment portion. Any comments for us?
Just on her thing about enrollment.
Yeah, do you want to come up here, please?
Yeah.
Please? That way you can be in the mic and our fan that's watching on the computer can watch.
No, when I was on the board back in the 70s, you could watch that enrollment just go right down the tubes from December right through June.
Mhm.
And to see them stay there for the entire year, that's pretty amazing. You know, the second comment would be academics and extracurriculars. If it hadn't been for cross-country, I never would have gotten to dental school.
Yeah.
Because my grades went from B's and C's to A's because of ADHD. So anything that we can do to encourage the kids to get involved in extracurriculars, there's nothing, you know this as well as I, there's nothing like having your school name on your chest or on your back when you're playing whatever sport it is. You're representing your community. Going back to the comment, we are the community, the school district is, and you're representing North Mason. So, those are mine.
Thank you so much.
Here, here.
Anybody else? All right, so we'll go on to board comments one last time around.
I'm good.
You're good, awesome.
Good.
I wanted to thank Craig for setting a precedent for me in the role of legislative rep. In 1 year, we not only appointed him legislative rep, but then he persuaded his colleagues to be on the legislative committee. I'm rather a tardy student on that, but I follow a high example, and I just wanted to honor Craig for setting an example for representing our district well and giving his successor some direction in what needs to be done. I also want to mention one other quick thing. I also have been entrusted with being your representative on the Mason Transit Authority, and we met this last Tuesday. I normally don't say too much about them. Our community has an interest in public transit, particularly for the more vulnerable members of our community, but also for anyone that wants to avoid using their car. I think a healthy mass transit system is very useful, vital to the enterprise of a vital school system. I shared with my colleagues at Mason Transit an article that was published in Tuesday's New York Times, and I recommend it to your attention. The gist of it was this: there's a very wealthy family who has lots of money made from petroleum. Their interest is not in mass transit. Their interest is getting rid of buses and urging more people to use their cars. My point is simply, this is something to be aware of if you're a friend of the public schools and, by implication of that, a friend of mass transit. Tuesday's New York Times.
Okay, I don't have any further comments. Thank you for that, John. I appreciate that. Board self-assessment of meeting. I'm going to make this quick. I'm going to rate the board's meeting behavior as satisfactory in all of our target areas. Governance principles reviews. I'm also going to rate us as satisfactory. overall, I think we were satisfactory. We stayed at our level and didn't go too much in and asked what needed to be asked. And so I'm going to do that. And then which moves us into our next board meeting date will be July 19th, right here at 6:30 p.m. We're going to be moving into an executive session in accordance with RCW. And the purpose of this executive session will be to evaluate the superintendent's performance during the 2017-18 school year. It should last approximately 30 minutes, and action is expected on this item when we come back from that executive session. So I'm going to adjourn us into executive session.